Need to push record. All right, here we go.
Remain seated, please. Permanecer sentados, por favor.
To all who come to this happy place, welcome.
Our largest single-theme land expansion ever.
Now we want you to share with us our latest and greatest dream.
Matterhorn Matt presents Matterhorn Mondays.
Welcome, everybody, to episode 155 of Matterhorn Mondays. You know, same old, same old. We got, it's me, Matterhorn Matt. I don't know what this intro is.
I'm Jeremy.
Yeah, he's Jeremy. I'm Matterhorn Matt, and this is the Matterhorn Mondays podcast. And I guess before we get started here, Jeremy, why don't you go ahead and, just for the new viewers, I suppose, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself? How did you get into, how you say, Disney history, Jeremy?
What is this? What is it? This is your life? What's going on? Are you gonna bring out my kindergarten teacher?
If you want, she's waiting. She's on standby.
The funny thing is that just yesterday, my family was going through old home videos, and on it was my 1-year-old birthday, my first birthday, and we were at Disneyland. Isn't that interesting?
Wow.
So I guess it started then. And let's move on.
Some great credentials here from Mr. Jeremy. But yeah, I'm sure you guys know who Jeremy is at this point. You guys know who I am at this point. We're glad to have you here on the show. And as always, links to all of our social media will be down in the description below. And if you'd like to be wished a happy birthday live on the stream, you can do so by clicking the link down below as well, submitting your name and your birthday in the Google Doc, and we'll add it to our birthday calendar here. And it looks like this week we only have one birthday. This upcoming Saturday, the 5th of December, is Joey's birthday. So happy birthday to you, Joey. Not sure if you're watching live or watching after the fact, but yeah, happy birthday, Joey. And let's see, can you believe that today is the last day of November, actually? Just looked at the calendar here.
Oh my God.
And it's crazy. Doesn't feel like December, but anyways, if you'd also like to be wished a happy, or if you'd like to call in, leave a voicemail on any of the topics that we're discussing today, 575-386-5814. We'd love to hear your guys' voice, hear any thoughts you have on the topics that we discussed today. And we do have some great topics to discuss today, but I guess before we get into everything, this was a pretty light news week. But there are still some pretty exciting things to talk about, like I mentioned. But of course, before we get into that, guys, I had a Snapple prepared, and I was thinking, do I want to save this Snapple for the show, or do I want to drink the Snapple on my lunch break? And I was looking at the bottle, and I realized, oh, it's the fruit punch Snapple flavor, one of the worst flavors. And I'm thinking to myself, I'll just drink it.
Mm-hmm.
And I have it in my fridge. I didn't finish it because, like I said, it's one of the worst. The fruit punch is one of the worst flavors, in my opinion. So sadly, there is no Matt Snaps this week. Next week, I'll have a better flavor to open for you guys like usual. But it is, of course, time to get into this week's news from the Peak.
We now present to you News from the Peak.
Here it is, everybody, for our first bit of news from the Peak. Imagineer Joe Rohde, and I guess it's Rohde or Road. I think it's Rohde. I guess I could go either way.
It's Rohde.
I've had this discussion with many people.
I don't know.
Yeah, I can never remember. I always say Rohde, and that's what we're gonna be going with here today. But yeah, Imagineer Joe Rohde is to hold a virtual garage sale. Now, of course, you all remember last week we covered Joe Rohde's sudden retirement announcement from Walt Disney Imagineering. And this week, the iconic Imagineer has announced that he will be holding a virtual garage sale to sell off many of his art memorabilia and artifacts inspired by and collected from his travels around the world. And you can check out the items Mr. Joe Rohde is putting for sale on his newly created Instagram at Rohde Garage Sale. And if you'd like to bid on any of the items, you can do so on Joe Rohde's eBay page. And of course, links to both of those will be down in the description below. You know, it's great to see he's getting a return on investment here from all the, from all the artifacts he's acquired. I love this picture of him with the helmet on. It's one of my favorite pictures that I've ever seen, I think. But yeah, link down below. Jeremy, are you going to be purchasing anything from his garage sale?
I don't think so, but I think it's pretty cool. And he's collected a ton of interesting stuff from around the world. And yeah.
Well, yeah, links will be down in the description if you guys are interested in that. But Jeremy, what do we have here for our second news from the peak?
Yeah, well, as it turns out, fireworks have returned to Walt Disney World in a holiday projection show. And a surprise lit up the skies at Walt Disney World last week to ring in the holiday season. Cinderella Castle's holiday projection show premiered with an element not previously announced, fireworks. While not the main focus of the show, low-level bursts, which Disney calls pyrotechnic pixie dust moments,
yes,
grace the Magic Kingdom night skies as the projections transform Cinderella Castle every 15 minutes. The projections are new this year since hanging the usual park-wide holiday decorations were canceled due to COVID. Now, will the projections stay as a future holiday time tradition, or will next year see the return of the castle's traditional holiday decor? Personally, I think both. I don't see any reason why they won't redecorate the castle once things can go back to normal. But Disney loves to project stuff on all the castles, so I can definitely see this possibly remaining and expanding for the years to come. What do you think, Matt?
Yeah, this is sort of an interesting topic that's come up since just, I think, this past week when they started doing these projections on the castle. A pretty hot topic. Should Disney replace there's like a specific name for the lights that they hang. I can't remember right off the top of my head. But I, for one, love both. I think I love both equally, to be honest, and I would be sad if either of them went away, because it's weird, because at this point the projections on the castles are really like the technology and like the projectors themselves, I'm sure, is like really good, so they can have this running just like all night long, and it won't, I think it looks cool, but I don't know, it's a tough question. I'd like to see both integrated in the future, but I guess we'll have to wait and see. But for our final bit of news from the peak here today, very sad bit of news here today. Former weightlifter and actor David Prowse died this past week at the age of 85, and he is perhaps most well known for physically portraying Darth Vader inside the iconic suit in the original trilogy. And George Lucas commented earlier saying David made Vader leap off the page and onto the big screen. And co-star Mark Hamill wrote, "He was a kind man and much more than Darth Vader. He loved his fans as much as they loved him. And while James Earl Jones gave Vader his voice and Sebastian Shaw his face, David Prowse gave him his legendary presence. And of course, yeah, he will be greatly missed. I don't think I've ever seen any other movies with him. I do only know him from the original Star Wars. But yeah, Jeremy, what are your thoughts here on actor David Prowse passing away this past week?
Yeah, of course it's sad. When anyone dies, but especially someone who gave, he did give life to Vader in his own way. Vader would be nothing without his physicality, right? The way he moved, the way he walked. So, yeah, it's very sad.
And yeah, like we said, he will be missed. Rest in peace for Mr. David Prowse. But that does it for this week's news from the peak. And yeah, like I said, we do have some great topics that we're going to be getting into first here. Jeremy, why don't you go ahead and give a little rundown of what the topics we're going to be discussing today are?
Yeah, we'll be discussing a lot of the major news from this past week. First, we'll take a look at Disney's behind-the-scenes video of Epcot's new Ratatouille ride. We'll share our thoughts and possibly dive into what this could mean for Epcot's future. Then, updates on park closures all over the world. That's the theme of this week's COVID rundown. And finally, more layoffs, what this means for cast members, guests, and the parks themselves moving into the new year. All that up ahead. But first, little surprise, not really. We're going to be testing out, we're introducing a new segment. Isn't that exciting?
Yes.
It's going to be called Question of the Day. We're not really settled on that yet. But basically what we're going to do is we're going to answer one of your burning questions each week. From outrageous hypotheticals to hot takes and beyond, the choice is yours, my friends. You'll be able to make one submission each week as we choose at random which question will be answered. And we'll make a Google form. We'll figure it out, but maybe a link to that will be in the description for the following weeks to come. This week's question, we reached out to our good friend of the podcast who helps us sometimes compile the news from the week, Matthew. Well, should we just go into it? Should I ask the question of the day?
Let's just get right into this week's question.
Is it getting negative responses? Okay. This is from Matthew. Okay, Matt, are you ready?
I'm ready, yes.
You'll go first since I'm asking the question of the day. But
okay.
Would you rather have a 1-month trip visiting all of the Disney parks around the world, or a 6-month stay at Disneyland, all expenses paid with a VIP guide?
Now this is most definitely a tough question, and I had to clarify beforehand. Would you rather have a 1-month trip visiting all the Disney parks? That is all the parks in a month. So you have 30 days to experience every single Disney park that you've ever wanted to go to. And then, of course, you have the other option, 6-month stay at Disneyland, all expenses paid with a VIP guide. And once I had that clarified for me, I think the choice, at least for me, was pretty easy. I would pick the 6-month stay at Disneyland, all expenses paid with a VIP guide. I think that's the reasonable answer. You know, I'd love to visit Disneyland Paris. I'd love to visit Tokyo Disneyland, but, you know, all expenses paid at Disneyland
That's
with the
true.
VIP guide.
For 6 months.
For 6 months.
Yeah.
You could get to the front of each ride with the VIP guide. So, yeah, that's my choice. I would choose the second option, a 6-month stay at Disneyland. What about you, Jeremy?
I mean, I've grown up going to Disneyland. I've had an annual pass. I've gone. I don't anymore. Haven't for a few years now, but I've gone, you know, as much as I love to. I've had that, not the all expenses paid part, but I've had the luxury of, you know, living in Southern California and having that experience. And the VIP guide doesn't really interest me. I like walking around myself or with whoever I'm with, exploring the park together or by myself. So I'm going to go with the more adventurous, experiencing all the parks around the world in a month. It's something I personally want to do eventually, not within a month span, but if that's the parameters for this question of the day, then I'm going to choose that. You know, it'll be exhausting and daunting, but at the end of the day, I'll get to experience all of the Disney parks around the world. So that's what I'm choosing.
Wow. And I see we have 2 in chat currently agreeing with Jeremy, so it looks like I'm the sort of odd one out here.
You lose. That's not how it works.
Yeah, well, that was a very interesting question from Matthew. Thank you for submitting the question, and
we kind of forced him to, but that sort of gives you the idea of how that segment will work. If you want your question to be answered, it'll be 1 a week. We'll choose at random. We'll figure out how to get those submissions going. So hopefully you all participate in that. All your burning questions answered in Matterhorn Matt's question of the day.
Yes, question. We need a theme song for question, or I guess we're not set on the name still. So if you guys have
a better title, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, if you have suggestions for names and or questions, you can I guess, yeah, there'll be a link
That'll
down
be
below.
included in next week's thing. We'll figure it out.
Yes. Well, on that note, I don't know how to transition this to our first topic of first topic of the day here, and our first topic is, of course, like Mr. Jeremy mentioned, Disney airs a promotional look at Epcot's upcoming Remy's Ratatouille adventure. Yeah, very interesting. Last week, as part of ABC's The Wonderful World of Disney Magical Holiday Celebration, Disney aired a segment which gave a behind-the-scenes preview of Epcot's upcoming attraction, Remy's Ratatouille Adventure. And the segment featured brief interviews with Imagineers Joe Vitale and Veronica Hebard, as they described what guests can experience in this new attraction new addition to the World Showcases France Pavilion. Yeah, very interesting stuff here. As you can see from this beautiful, I think the facade looks pretty beautiful in my opinion. The attraction is based on the scene from the 2007 Pixar classic in which Remy falls into Gusteau's, I think that's how it's pronounced. It's been a while since I've seen the movie.
Gusteau, you're good.
Gusteau, that's right. Yeah, either way, his chaotic kitchen, and then Vitale goes on to explain that guests are going to feel as if they've been shrunk down to the size of a rat. So we really play with the fun of the scale and how you will get to experience this immersive ride from a rat's eye perspective. He goes on to describe some of the many 4D effects guests will experience on the attraction, which utilizes the popular trackless ride system. Now, of course, neither Vitale nor Herbert mentioned the attraction's first and current home overseas in the Walt Disney Studios Park at the Disneyland Paris Resort, with Hebard saying, quote, "While I was first brought onto this project, it was nothing but dirt and a whole lot of drawings," unquote, despite the fact that the attraction has lived in Paris for the past 6.5 years, opening the summer of 2014. And Hebard would not begin at Walt Disney Imagineering until 2015 and took on her current position as Project Controls Estimator, interesting, in 2018. Now, should we pause there, Mr. Jeremy? No?
No, it's just a paragraph left. Might as well read it.
Oh, it's just all right. We still have a little bit more here. The promo left out any discussion on how the attraction would contribute to new Epcot's themes and how it planned on thematically expanding the World Showcases France Pavilion. But of course, this was only a minute 45 promotional spot, and hopefully we will hear more about the project's team before Remy's Ratatouille Adventure officially opens up in 2021. There we go.
So soon.
Yeah, from my understanding, the ride is, or at least from what I've been hearing, the ride is pretty much finished. It's just a matter of when they decided to actually open the ride. Next year is when this attraction will finally be opening. Excuse me, and it's weird. I don't think there's really anybody who's clamoring. Because I remember, I think in February or March of this year, when Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway first opened, there were lots of, people crowding to first experience that ride. And from what I've been feeling around, on Twitter and everything, I don't really think there's necessarily a lot of people who are excited for this attraction to open, especially since it's a clone from an already existing attraction out in Paris. Jeremy, what are your thoughts here on these brand new promotional images, videos of this new attraction?
Well, the funny thing is we actually didn't really learn anything we didn't already know about the attraction. And I mean, footage is really not really revelatory because, I mean, I just watched a ride through of it before doing the stream today. It's been open since 2014 in Disneyland Paris. I do think people are excited for this attraction. Don't get me wrong. I do think that you'll see, well, I mean, crowds will be limited, right? They can only have 25% capacity, but I do think that capacity is going to be filled at Epcot that day for this attraction. People want to experience something the day it opens, even if it's a clone from another park, and people are excited to experience this attraction because who knows when they'll be able to go to Disneyland Paris to experience it. Not that it's nearly the best. People are clamoring to go to Disneyland Paris to experience the Ratatouille ride. So I question whether this ride will age well in terms of as Epcot ages. But right now it's always exciting, and when there's a new attraction, a new expansion of the area. But yeah, what was definitely, of course, it's a minute 45 spot, and it's a commercial for the upcoming ride. Basically, I don't expect them to talk about how it's a clone attraction, or even go so far as to talk about how it works into Epcot. But usually you do find, though, with new additions, I know they did this with Frozen Ever After, they did try to articulate as best as they could how it fit into Epcot, even though it was pretty questionable. And I do know a lot of people in the fan community find their justification for a lot of these changes to be questionable, in the sense of the fact that there doesn't really seem to be any sort of genuine, authentic, organic response when anyone's asked a question regarding that. Yeah, I mean, I look forward to experience anything for the first time, even if I'm critical of whether it works into the ideas of the park or not. But yeah, I do know it's not the most beloved attraction in Disneyland Paris Resorts history, but I do think people are clamoring to experience it because it's something new, and that's exciting, at least here on this coast. And yeah,
I guess we should be happy that Epcot, or I guess World Showcase, is getting are getting attractions, I guess. And I guess Ratatouille's not necessarily, I don't think now that I think about it, I don't think I've ever seen Ratatouille.
Wow, you never seen Ratatouille? It's good.
So.
It's good. Good movie.
I think I've only seen bits and pieces of it. I've heard, Jeremy, I've heard it's a good movie from a lot of people as well, and it's been on my list. But yeah, I guess we should be happy that World Showcase is getting attractions, or whether or not it's a clone or not. More attractions in Epcot are a good thing, in my opinion. But yeah, it does put into question how this fits into new Epcot's themes. And I do remember you touched on the Frozen ride. I do remember them sort of trying to justify putting it into the Norway Pavilion, which, if you agree with that, that's whatever. But yeah, I don't know. Ratatouille. Remy's a cute rat. I'll give Disney a pass for this ride. I'll go on it, and then I'll watch the movie. But yeah, Tony asked if it's trackless. Yes, this is a trackless attraction. Yeah, and I guess suffice to say, neither of us have experienced the original attraction in Paris, so we can't really speak on the ride experience itself, I guess. But we've seen ride-throughs. Looks pretty neat attraction in my opinion. But yeah, do you have anything else to add, Mr. Jeremy, on Remy's Ratatouille adventure?
I'm sure we'll be covering it within the next 4 months or so. So yeah, we'll be probably talking about Ratatouille very soon.
Yes, movie review coming soon.
Well, ride review, but yeah, we can talk about the movie too. That's fine.
Movie and ride review. All right, well, that does it, I guess, for our first topic, and I'd love to hear what you guys have to think as well. Comment down below. Have you ridden the original attraction? Do you think this is a good fit into World Showcase or Epcot in general? We'd love to hear what you guys have to think. But before we get into our final topic, as well as the COVID rundown, let's go ahead and take a quick break to listen to the show's sponsors. If you guys are wondering where you can find even more family-friendly live streams just like this one, head on over to theliveplace.com. The Live Place is your headquarters for great family-friendly live streams. They cover anything from Disney to other vacation spots, various variety shows, and have some amazing streamers like Resort TV 1 and myself. Also, be sure to check out puckermint.com, where you can find amazing pins and stickers, Puckermint is based out of Albuquerque, New Mexico, just a few hours from where I live. And since I'm a big believer in supporting local artists, we decided to partner up. Be sure to use the coupon code down below when you make your next order. Again, that's puckermint.com and puckermint on Instagram. Well. It looks like we're back from the sponsor break. And we're glad to be back because it is, of course, time for everybody's favorite segment, the COVID Headline Rundown.
This week on Matterhorn Monday, Matt and company continue their reports and discussions on COVID-19 and its impact on the Disney company around the world.
Yes, it is the COVID Headline Rundown. We haven't done this in a couple episodes, I don't think.
Yeah.
Bringing it back here because there was some very interesting bits of news here. Now, if you guys don't know how this segment works, this is the segment where we sort of just run down the headlines of topics that we think you guys might find interesting. We're not necessarily elaborating on these, but links will be in the description, of course, if you'd like to, further read up on these stories here. And for our first headline, we have Hong Kong Disneyland reclosing for the third time on December 2nd due to the rise in COVID cases. The third time. That's crazy that I remember they did close, so very interesting. Second headline here, Disneyland Paris announces the park will not end up reopening for the holiday season and will stay closed through February 13th. So that's they closed just a few weeks ago, I believe, if I'm remembering correctly. But for our third headline here, excuse me, Disneyland cancels grad night for the class of 2021 due to the park's uncertain reopening status. Now, when is grad night? That's March? Is that not when that is? March or April?
Grad night's usually in May, like
May.
when graduation, May or June when graduation happens
Okay.
For high schools in the Southern California area. Yeah.
I don't know why March. I guess they both started with M. March and May. There it is. Finally here for our final headline. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis says there will be no new lockdowns or mask mandates as state reaches all-time high at over 17,000 new COVID cases last week. And the big question is, will Disney continue to follow the CDC guidelines? I guess we can touch on that briefly. They will. They'll keep the mask mandate, I'm pretty sure.
They absolutely will.
Yeah.
And I actually just want to clarify something. That is the 17,000. That's new daily cases reported just a few days ago on the 27th. So that isn't 17,000 for the whole week. That's 17,000 new daily cases as of, I believe, the 27th. So that is an all-time high for that state. And we don't need to get into it, but we're just but that's the news.
There it is. Of course, links will be down below. Comments are also down below if you'd like to, touch on any of those headlines that we discussed there. But that does it for this week's COVID headline. And Jeremy, what do we have here for our final topic of the day?
Yeah, I hate to be the bearer of more bad news.
Yeah.
But Disney increases layoffs from 28,000 to 32,000 in response to 2020's financial losses. Late last week, the Walt Disney Company released their SEC 10K form, which revealed that Disney will be increasing the number of layoffs by 4,000. The SEC filing states, quote, due to the current climate, including COVID-19 impacts and changing environment in which we are operating, the company has generated efficiencies in its staffing, including limiting hiring to critical business roles, furloughs, and reductions in force. As part of these actions, the employment of approximately 32,000 employees, primarily at Parks, Experiences, and Products, will terminate in the first half of fiscal 2021. This news comes as the community still grieves the loss of employment for 28,000 employees in various departments within the Parks, Experiences, and Products division, from Imagineers to cast members within the last few months. 4,000 more employees in the Parks division can expect to be laid off between the new year and spring. Variety reports that the Walt Disney Company's annual revenue decreased by 23% from the previous year to $14.7 billion, with a total loss in the fiscal year of $7.4 billion. Although Disney stated earlier in the pandemic that they would avoid layoffs at all costs, their fourth quarter earnings release states, quote, "We may take additional mitigation actions in the future, such as raising additional financing, not declaring future dividends, reducing or not making certain payments, such as some contributions to our pension and post-retirement medical plans, further suspending capital spending, reducing film and television content investments, or implementing additional furloughs or reductions in force." Investors, however, are relatively optimistic about Disney's situation, with shares trading at the same rate they were pre-pandemic. In the same earnings report, CEO Bob Chapek said, quote, "Even with the disruption caused by COVID-19, we've been able to effectively manage our businesses while also taking bold, deliberate steps to position our company for greater long-term growth." The company's SEC 8K filing from February states that, quote, "Mr. Chapek's annual rate of base salary increased to $2.5 million. The employment agreement provides that Mr. Chapek is also eligible for an annual performance-based bonus of not less than 300% of the annual base salary in effect at the end of the preceding fiscal year." While Disney's recent 10K form does mention that, quote, "The board of directors did not declare a dividend with respect to fiscal 2020 operations," unquote, with the possibility of not declaring future dividends, nowhere does it, and no other outside source has yet to confirm if Chapek and other senior executives have considered foregoing their salaries again as an option to mitigate damage. But it seems the Walt Disney Company has made it abundantly clear that even with all they have already done to navigate the company through hard times, they care more about preserving their senior executives' seven-figure salaries than the lives of 28,000 human beings, and now 4,000 more. Well, that's that.
Well.
I believe it doesn't specify what the spreading out of, or the dividing up of how many people will be let go at each park. I do believe last time more people got let go at Disneyland than they did at Disney World. I don't know if something similar is going to happen, but it does apply to all of the parks' experiences and products division, which will most likely include more cast members being let go and hopefully not more Imagineers on top of that as well. But we'll see. It's pretty more devastating news. I personally, Matt, I'm sure you feel the same way. I don't understand why they haven't even considered. They talk about things they are considering in this report. Mm-hmm. Again, they talked about, I'm glad to hear that they haven't declared dividends, right, for as extra compensation. And I'm also glad to hear that they may be considering not declaring future dividends, but within that may in the future conversation there in the forum, they don't discuss even as a possibility discussing even cutting senior executive salaries. Like I said, Chapek's contract as of last February, his salary went up to $2.5 million. So at least he is in the seven-figure range, and I would love to see the CEO of the company take a strong leadership position and at least cut his own salary. Even if it saves 50 jobs, that's 50 lives.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. $2.5 million is like more money than any of us can like comprehend, I'm sure. And
yeah, I'm sure, I'm not trying to be cynical, but most likely it's money that none of us in this chat and on this stream will ever see in our lifetime.
Yeah.
That's how big that amount of money is. But I don't want to, wealth shame Chapek, although we could do that another time. But I do think it's worth pointing out when covering this news, it is suspiciously missing from the conversation. The fact that it isn't even on the table for them is something they might consider to do in the future. Again, even if it saves 50 jobs, it's 50 people who make far less than any of the senior executives do. Who but it's complicated. We had Freddie on last week, and he talked about how it's complicated if there is no work for people to do. So it's a lot more complicated than that, but still.
Yeah, what was the point of them getting rid of the salaries in the first place if they're just gonna bring them back and then just not
and then keep them?
And then what was even the point of them doing it the first time? I'm just so confused looking back now.
Well, the point of them doing it the first time was to avoid, as they said, they want to avoid layoffs as much as possible. They also wanted to, I don't know if they wanted to, but they did provide benefits for a certain period of time. They continued to pay cast members at least for another month. At the very least, another month. And they took the cut, I guess, to help mitigate that. And at the same time, there were senior executives who were not happy about that. So it's complicated because Chapek doesn't want to be ousted by the board, number one. If the board, which could happen, right? The board has a lot of power in a huge company. It's complicated, but also at the end of the day, what's actually, again, that's 32,000 people. That's people who don't have $2.5 million in their bank account. If you're like me, you don't even have $10,000, and you probably don't even have $1,000 in your bank account. So, of course, I'm not good at money, but I just think there's a disconnect. I mean, I understand it's numbers and figures, and to them, that number, 32,000, is number of jobs, not number of people whose lives will be hopefully not ruined, but greatly affected. So I don't understand why it's not on the table. I would at least like a senior executive to come out and try to explain why it hasn't been on the table. Because it confounds me. I think we at least deserve an explanation. I would at least, even if the explanation is, well, it's complicated and a business has to. I would just like to hear them say that out loud. I would just like to hear them say that as opposed to hiding in a corner and not even addressing it. Coming up with sentimental, PR stunts.
Yeah.
And not really following through and addressing the elephant in the room, quite frankly. So, again, even if it saves 50 jobs, someone might say, well, it might only just say 50 jobs, in which case, what's 50 jobs? That's 50 people.
Sure, yeah.
People. Could it be you? It could be a family member that you rely on, or, at the end of the day, that's 32,000 people. And of course, so many people are affected by this. I mean, I've been affected by this. I'm still unemployed, and that's going to be running out soon. And this is just very high anxiety time financially, but it's people's lives. And if a company that claims to care about people does this, then maybe they've lost that part of themselves.
Freddie said in chat, the 32K is the company-wide total. So no new layoffs are coming to the parks division. 32K total, 28K parks and products. That's 1/6 of the company's workforce gone. So
that's interesting. I guess I'll reread the segments of the form, and I'll reread the articles that I read. How it's been reported is that this is primarily I guess the primarily is the 28,000. So are the 4,000 more jobs not in the parks division? Are they coming from somewhere else? Because the reporting I'm seeing at least is implying that it's still parks division related. But I can double check that, and maybe you can. You're much more resourceful than I am, Freddie. I'm sure you can get me those resources. But that's the impression that it's been made to me by the resources that I have read.
Yeah, and I don't know. I mean, I'm trying to think if there are any other examples of companies who have taken pay cuts to help their employees, and I guess I just haven't been keeping up, or I guess paying attention to that in the news, because I can't think of just any off the top of my head. But I guess you'd think Disney being this, wonderful, perfect, family-friendly, company, that they'd be one of the first to sort of lead the way when it comes to, all businesses, I'm sure, are affected by the pandemic. You'd think Disney would be one of the first to sort of take the lead to have their CEOs take the pay cuts to help the cast members, and I guess you could make the argument they did take the pay cuts earlier in the year, but of course they brought the salaries back to the normal wages. But it's just, I don't know. It's just, that's too many people that have been laid off, It's, we sound like broken records, I'm sure, at this point.
I know. I know. I mean, listen, I wasn't, if there wasn't this piece of news, we probably would have gone away with not addressing the layoffs again. But, yeah.
Well, I guess, you guys know how we've normally been doing it. Links will be down, of course, in the description to help the cast members because, Disneyland, or I guess Disneyland and Walt Disney World, both, or I guess, these people don't have jobs anymore. It'll probably take a while for a lot of them to be able to find jobs because not a lot of companies are hiring right now, I'm sure. So, they need all the help that they can get. Of course, links, like I said, in the description to help support the cast members. But yeah, it's just very disheartening to see more layoffs coming and then to see the executives, it feels like they don't care about the cast members, which is very very sad because the cast members, for the most part, are the ones that make, the magic for all the guests in the parks. And it's just, let's have Bob Chapek put on an ice cream scooper's uniform and go out and work in the California heat for a couple months, and then we'll see if he wants to keep his salary, take a pay cut to help the cast members. But yeah, Jeremy.
I just want to clarify a couple things. So I think it's a situation of it's unclear how many of the additional 4,000. It hasn't been officially stated that the 4,000 is not going to be in the parks division. A lot of I've just pulled up multiple different sources now, and a lot of the reporting, unless it's misleading reporting, seems to imply that the 32,000 total is within the parks experiences and products division. That could be wrong. I do know that it had the form doesn't officially state where the additional 4,000 is coming, if it is spread out, what specific divisions, and how many of the 4,000 will be in the parks division. So it's not that the 4,000 won't affect the parks division at all. I think there's actually an unclear thing here. It's unclear if, again, how that's going to be divvied up. But a lot of the reporting I'm seeing is saying that even the 4,000 might primarily be in the parks division, but that is unclear even in the form itself. So we'll see. Regardless, it's a mess and very complicated stuff to deal with. So.
Yeah. Freddie said in chat again, as I stated last week, the people being laid off would not be able to return to work for over a year from now. Disney can't be fully staffed while running at such reduced capacity. The good news is that most people could get a job or could get an offer of reemployment if or when the jobs return. So yeah, like we said at the beginning, at the top of this, it is complicated, when it comes to these layoffs. And, it's interesting if you try to think, what would you do if you were in the position of some of these executives? Like if you were Bob Chapek, if you were bald, what would you do in this situation? But yeah, I mean, of course, I'm sure I'd hope the majority of us would have all the executives take the pay cuts to help at least keep the cast members, as many as possible, employed for as long as possible. But yeah, again, it's complicated.
It's complicated.
Yeah. Business is complicated, and that's why, I guess that's why we make YouTube videos, because we don't, I don't know where I'm going with this, but business is complicated was my point.
Oh.
Yeah.
If you ever see us sponsored by Disney, run for the hills.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Okay.
That's true. Good point. Yeah. Well, again, it is very sad that we still have to keep reporting because it keeps happening on this topic. And of course,
yeah,
lots of cast members, I'm sure, have, I think there was a link I put a few episodes ago of like Google form with like Etsy shops from some cast members that they have, or like the Depop stores, to help support them that way. Yeah, links to all that will be down below for you to give your support. Jeremy, any final thoughts on this topic?
No, I'm tired of talking about it. But we would be remiss to just ignore these stories and invent happy stories. We're trying to add some segments in here, like Question of the Day, to keep the show fun. But these are hard times, and if we're not going to talk about and actively engage with the hard times, then I don't really think we're doing what we do well. So, sorry if you're depressed. I'm depressed too.
Very true. Yeah, we have to cover this stuff, even if it's very sad. Gary Vaughn said, if people would adhere to the CDC guidelines, we could get through quicker. Just my thought. Gary,
I hear you.
True,
I hear you.
That's true. Very true.
I hear you. Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess that wraps up our final segment of the show, and I guess that wraps up this here episode of Matterhorn Mondays. Jeremy, take it away. Any thoughts before we close here?
Good night.
Yes, from Saturday night, it's live. Good night. Is that how it goes?
Oh, God.
I don't think that's how it goes.
Well, you wanted to give me the last word, and then you took it back and did something really bad.
I'm sorry, everybody. I ruined it. Well, anyways, thank you all for coming to today's episode. Links to all the articles, like always, will be down in the description if you'd like to read up on anything that we discussed today. Links to all of our social media will, of course, be down in the description. Happy birthday, all that jazz. 575-386-5814 if you'd like to call in throughout the week. Leave a voicemail on any of the topics that we discussed. Freddie said, I have a shop on Etsy with Atlantis, the Lost Empire inspired merch if you're into that sort of thing. The shop is titled Tomorrowland Presents. Yeah, I believe I saw Freddie's
check it out.
Post about that. I think it's a recreation of a promo shirt for the movie. I can't remember right off the top of my head. Great stuff. Link will be down below. Yeah. I feel like there was something I wanted to say before we left. Oh, I wanted to do a review of my foot pedal that I bought, but I guess it's not that important. I bought a USB foot pedal that you can bind keys to. And I guess my review is that I love it, and I'll probably buy another one at some point, so I recommend it. But yeah, I guess that's gonna, my review will end today's episode. If you like the episode, click like, and don't forget to subscribe. We don't tell people to subscribe, I don't think. I see other YouTubers do it, but we don't do it. I think we should start.
Yeah, subscribe. We also have a Patreon that we will be revamping very soon, make it more exciting. And we'll also have more content coming soon.
Oh,
Might be some trailers and stuff like that coming.
We also have a new logo in the works for the podcast.
New logo in the works as well,
which we're excited about.
The podcast. That's right.
Yeah, not really sure on the ET on that, but soon. Everything is just soon. We're getting to it. It's been cold. I have had to gather firewood for my family at my office to keep warm. But that's neither here nor there. Thank you all for coming to today's episode. And as always, have a great big beautiful tomorrow.